Hi everyone, welcome to Sabrina Sumbry Show. I am Sabrina Sumbry. Here are your clues for today's show. Okay, my guests are highly and boldly recognized in their respective careers. That's number one. And number two, if you've ever gone to a college graduation and you've seen students wear those elaborate velvet gowns or those gowns with the velvet straps around the arms and those velvet caps, that's clue number two. Now take a look at this. Phoenix City, Russell County, Lee County. Please welcome to today's show, Dr. Misha Ramsey Patrick. Dr. Patrick is a federal programs director. She's a mentoring coordinator. She's a guidance coordinator. She's vice president of Phoenix City School Board. Dr. Patrick, thank you for coming and welcome to the show. And also joining us on today's show is Dr. Fred Pram Jr., native of Phoenix City, Alabama. He's currently Chief Executive Officer of Primp Consulting Association, an education solution and training company that serves clients such as Zahner Blauser, McGraw-Hill, and the National Alliance of Black School Educators. Thank you, Dr. Primp.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show. We are going to get started here. I'm going to start by asking Dr. Patrick, can you tell us what's your story?
Well, I was educated in the Phoenix City school system. I attended Westview, Ridgecrest, it's now PCIS, but it was a Central Elementary School on up, South Gerard Central. Graduated from Central in 1991. I then went on to the University of Alabama, and I graduated from the University of Alabama in 95, where I received a bachelor's in English and History education, secondary education. I got my master's degree from Troy University in guidance counseling, and a specialist degree in guidance counseling. After I received those degrees, I went on to Auburn University, where I received my doctorate in educational leadership with the emphasis in curriculum from Auburn University.
My goodness. Let me ask you, was becoming an educator your first career choice?
No, it really wasn't. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a high-powered attorney.
Okay.
When I went off to the University of Alabama, I was being interviewed by a student for a thesis, and I started talking about all these things that I like to do and what I want to do with my life. And he just said, "Have you ever thought about becoming a teacher?" And I said, "Well, no, they don't make any money." So I said no, and then I went home for the summer and I worked with Operation Catch Up, and that was a summer tutorial program. And I had someone there that said, "Well, why don't you become a teacher?" And I said, "No, I'm not going to do all of that. I'm still going to become an attorney." I was going off to the Peace Corps. Okay. And Ms. Velleen Gillis, who was a teacher at that time, said, "Miss Misha, why are you going all the way around the world to save children when we have kids in Phoenix City, Alabama who need you?"
Okay.
So that was the final thing, and I went back to school, changed my major. I ended up with a degree in education, came back home and started teaching.
So you were persuaded to become a teacher?
I was persuaded to become a teacher.
That's very good. What did your family think about your career choice?
Well, my mom and dad, since I'm a first generation college student, they all wanted me to be teachers. Okay. And I really didn't feel like that was my calling. Okay. So they were excited.
Okay, wonderful. Let's bring Dr. Pram in. Dr. Pram, what is your story, sir?
Well, I attended Mother Mary Mission, and from there went to South Gerard High School, and then eventually matriculated to Central High School. From there, I left and went to Auburn University, and from Auburn, I transferred to Alabama A&M. And I got 2 degrees there, and then eventually went off to work. And my story is similar to hers in terms of I'm a second generation teacher. Okay. And initially, when I first graduated from Alabama A&M, I was getting ready to go to law school. Amazing. And I had a mentor that I'll probably mention later that had attended Southern University, so I was going to go to Southern University. And back then, the cohorts were like you start in the fall, and then you pick up and you go throughout the whole year. And I came home to work, and I so happened to work at Westview Elementary under Miss Ellis, who had been my PE teacher in the 9th grade, and I was also coaching. And eventually, I worked there for 6 months, and I was like, no, this is what I'm called to do. And so as a result, I went back to Alabama A&M and got my master's, and then eventually went on to get a certification in administration, then my doctorate. And from there, the rest is history.
Amazing, because I remember you saying your mom was an educator. Did she have any influence over your decision as to become an educator?
She really did. I think she did without saying anything. I think the example that I saw, the people that she helped, and how much people respected her for what they had done, and how they would come up to her years later and say how you had an effect and you didn't even know. That I think those seeds were planted without knowing. But like Dr. Patrick said, it was a situation where, hey, maybe if you want to go somewhere and make some additional money, maybe you need to choose another profession.
What's the makeup of the Alabama school system? How many components are there to the Alabama school system? Are there different branches of the Alabama school system?
Yes, you want to tackle that?
Well, to specifically say what are the different departments.
Departments is more, okay.
I couldn't specifically just name them all in reference to my job. Like there's a federal programs division of the Department of Education. Okay. Then you have people who look over at-risk attendance, and those are all safety components. Then you have the curriculum department. And then they have the legal department. So there are different components within that department that is reflective within our school district. Okay. We have a person in all school district who's over at risk, who's over attendance, who's over curriculum and federal programs. Some of those jobs are more than one person will do that. Some of them are individual people.
Okay, so
and I'll go from a broader perspective because first of all, of course, you have the state school board, and then you have the State Department of Education, but also the legislature, because they play a part in it because your budget is passed through the legislature. So they have, a hand in the education system. And then of course you have what we call the local education agencies. So sometimes you may hear terms like LEA. So that's those local school districts like Phoenix City and Russell County. Those are considered LEAs, local education agencies. And then of course you have your local school boards, and then you have all the administrative arms, and then of course down to the teachers and the students.
You answered my next question, because my next question was what was the function in the local area? What was the function in the state area of the school system, and what was the function on the national area?
Well, one thing that I always try to, because I've served as an adjunct professor from time to time, and one of the things that we always preach to our students, and Dr. Patrick probably can attest to this, is that we always tell students that education is a state function. And so that's why you see the trend now of the federal government saying, well, hey, we want to return back to the state rights and things of that nature, because in actuality, it was set up so that the states would really finance the education portion of government. And so in terms of just from a state perspective, they're really responsible for undergirding or supporting the public education system. From a local standpoint, pretty much the way Alabama is set up, we have, and we'll talk about it later probably, the foundation system that is set up to help fund the school systems, but then also there's this local responsibility to make sure through local taxes and things of that nature to kind of help support it. But then it's up to the individual communities to really be the support base in terms of offering additional resources, making sure that they send students, those kind of things. So that's where the locals come in, where they work hand in hand in terms of just like the community works with the municipalities, then they work with the school systems in that same manner.
So we all need each other.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this. Okay, I'm sorry.
And I was going to say the federal component of it is like through the federal grants that our State Department receives, and it is sent out to each individual LEAs. For example, Title I. Title I is a federal grant that is given to our state to be distributed upon our school districts, and it's based on the poverty rate and at-risk rate of our children within that school district. It's supposed to supplement anything that our state or local government couldn't provide for our children. With Title II is teacher education. That is also a federal grant. It's supposed to supplement what our state and local cannot provide for our teachers, as well as additional teaching units.
And Sabrina, I think that's an important point that Dr. Patrick brings up, because sometimes when the community or parents will see us You might have some of the professionals, educators, the administrators or the teachers, they may be going to professional development, or they may be bringing speakers in, or they may be bringing consultants in. And a lot of times they say, well, you're saying that you don't have any money, but I see people going on trips. I see you doing this professional development. I see you doing all these other things. Right. Why is it that you can't use that money for these particular things that you're asking us for? And it goes back to what she was saying, that it only is to supplement. So if the state provides money, then you can't take federal dollars. And so those dollars are really line item, and there are specific regulations. And if you misuse them, not only can you have to pay the money back to the state and the federal government, but also, depending on the individual, there could be jail time. So that's why a lot of times parents see school districts doing different things, but they're using the money from Title I, Title II, because they have to fulfill those needs.
My goodness, you've shared with us something I guess I didn't know of. However, I want to talk about, you've jumped ahead of me. I want to talk about the new Secretary of Education. You've kind of gone there already, and the new laws and rules and regulations that we're facing. Is there something we need to pay attention to that we're not paying attention to concerning the new laws, the new regulations that's going on with?
Right now, the new proposed budget, and I say proposed because it has not been voted on or has not been approved by our Congress. And to say what, to piggyback what Dr. Pram said, the arm of the vote is very important because they do decide the budgets. And right now, for the 2018 budget year for federal education programs, there's a cut, and the cut will be in Title II, which is teacher education, as well as the 21st century grants will be after school programs. The counties or the LEAs who receive the after school programs are those environments that don't have access to a Boys and Girls Club or any kind of community agency that will supplement that after school program. When you cut those type of programs, you cut additional services to children who can't go home to a parent who can help with the homework, or may have to go home where there is no parent because that parent is working. With the Title II, all the additional educational opportunities that we provide for our teachers, and we need that in order for our children to remain cutting edge. How we're going to expect our children to keep up and to continuously learn if we don't have that expectation for our teachers. So those are items in the 2018 budget that are scheduled to be cut.
Oh my goodness. Are we prepared to offset this budget cut?
Well, in the two LEAs one that I'm on the board and the one that I work in, we have started some discussion of what will happen if those things are cut. Teacher units will be cut because we use Title II for some additional teaching units. We're going to have probably some more crowded classrooms.
My goodness.
Areas where we could offer other type of activities after school, that will be cut because we are using this as a supplement and additional services. Now we'll go back to basic funding from the state and LEA.
My goodness.
And I think in terms of the state, for the most part, we're based, the way that we finance our educational system in the state is somewhat different from some of the other states because it's based on really sales and income tax. So it's not really based on property tax, so to speak. So there is some what we call ad valorem tax that comes in to help, but for the most part, our property tax is so low that even if you doubled our property tax in the state of Alabama, it still would be in the bottom 10th percentile. So for the most part, we really don't do a really good job of funding public education.
One final question here. What are the biggest issues currently facing public education in Alabama?
I would say charter schools would be one. School choice. Also, I think that's going to be a real big issue that people really have not been paying attention to is the fact of funding. Right now, our general fund budget is probably in the millions in terms of the state, but education is $6 billion. Wow. So there's been this push to merge the two budgets so that you can make up the shortfalls, whether it be in Medicaid or Medicare, or whether it's in some other area, prisons, or whatever the case may be. If you had to combine budgets, then you could just kind of cut across the board, as opposed to leaving the education budget over here and having it there. So I think that's going to be, and Dr. Patrick probably can elaborate even more, but I think that's going to be the real question as to will they continue to have separate budgets or will they combine them? And then I think you will really see a shortfall, especially since you already see a shortfall from the federal standpoint now coming down to the states. And eventually it's going to force the LEAs to figure out ways to do it, and they're going to have to cut.
With school choice, and I like to use like our area as an example. We have two private schools in our area right now. That's a great testament to our local LEAs, Russell County, Phoenix City, and the Lee County Smith Station area, that our parents feel comfortable enough and feel comfortable in knowing or secure enough that their child, when you send your kids to school, that they're going to be safe and then that they're going to receive a quality education. Right. In systems or in areas where you have a lot of private schools popping up, you have this issue of school choice because they feel like the kids are not safe and they're not receiving a sound curriculum or a sound foundation in education. For us, only have one high school as a private school, and then we have the other private school is the elementary school. That says a lot to our area and how much emphasis we put on our curriculum, as well as how safe our parents perceive us to be.
Okay. I said one more question, but we're going to continue on with this segment. What role should the community play in improving education?
I think there's multiple roles they should play. First of all, there has to be a real collaboration between the community, the local school board, and the local school administration. There has to be this collaborative, it has to be a team. A lot of times we find the blame game in terms of one particular entity is saying that the other one is not holding up their end of the bargain. But I think through real thoughtful conversation and collaboration, I think if everyone could come up with a strategic plan and make sure that everyone is on the same page and you have some desired outcomes, then I think that's when you can really see some progression in terms of the school district.
When I did my dissertation, it was on the effect of parental involvement in a child's overall academic success. And what my study revealed was that it didn't matter how much a parent possessed or how much they made, that was the determining factor how successful that child was in school. It was the level of importance that the parent placed on education. In any environment where parents are engaged in the educational process, you see a different type of student. So when parents are disengaged from the process, it's not as valuable to the child, or the child has to find his or her own motivation of value for that for the education. But when parents are involved and actively engaged in the educational process, and I'm not talking about you engaged when you're upset about something, but you're engaged from the time that they enter school into the time that they leave. When you go to a kindergarten PTA, the room is packed. By the time they become a junior high school student, you're almost begging parents to come and be engaged. So if we can continue that same level of involvement when we release our babies to kindergarten to the time that they are 12th graders, we'll probably have a more educated population who values education, in which you wouldn't have this thing about, well, we're going to cut education or we're going to merge the two budgets, because you'll have proponents of, we need to keep our educational system intact, because through education, and we all know education provides opportunities and knowledge is power. And if you don't have parents who are rooting for that knowledge, who are saying that my child deserves, besides complaining or being upset when something doesn't go their way, but my child deserves a quality education, and it doesn't matter where they live, what environment that they was born into, that we would see a different student coming out of our school systems.
I'm so glad you said that, Dr. Patrick, because my question, I had one question, and it was stemming around how can we, as parents, is there a sure measure to guarantee our children's success in education? Can we, for sure be certain that they can be successful when they leave the high school?
Well, I don't really think that anyone could, there's a guarantee, money back guarantee if your child isn't successful, because it then becomes the child's responsibility and motivation to be successful. Okay. But one thing that we can do as parents is make sure that our children take advantage of those opportunities. If there is an after-school program and your child is struggling, make sure your child gets there. Don't wait until the end of the school year and decide, well, they have to go to summer school. I'm one of these people who believes that they can't make up a year in 3 weeks in the summertime. Throughout the year, most schools have, throughout the year, they have different remediation type programs. If they're struggling, take advantage of those things. Read to your kids at night. That's one thing that I found out that was very valuable to me as a mom, to instill the love of reading and the love of learning to your child, is to actively engage with your child. Now we're so easily to give them an iPad or a phone so that they can play games. And we work, we want some downtime when we get home, but the act of just engaging your child in learning, instills that and probably allows your children to understand the value of learning by teaching them to read, or to just reading with them and spending that educational time with them.
Okay. Just spending more time and getting them to read and learn. My next question is, who decides the curriculum? What courses will be taught in school?
There is a collaboration between the local education agencies and the State Department of Education. So, of course, the State Department, they compile or build a course of study. And so based on the different subject areas, whether it be core subjects like math, English, and social studies and science, those are your core areas. And then of course you have the extracurricular types of areas. But they provide a course of study, those things that they should know based on standards that have been approved by the State Department of Education. Also, the LEAs, the local agencies, we have the latitude to, if there are some particular courses that we want to add, we can add those. We just have to get them approved, and maybe she can elaborate a little bit more. They can approve, the State Department can approve it to make sure, because it may be something that is specific or germane to our particular region or area. And so probably about 3 or 4 years ago, they passed the Accountability Act. And in there was a flexibility component that allowed, because there was a real push for charter schools. And at the time, Dr. Tommy Bice was the superintendent, and as superintendents, we solicited him and we solicited the board and the legislators to say, hey, before you go to charter schools, why don't you give us the flexibility to be able to do some of the things? And so that is a component that we have in the law now, that if there's something that perhaps is not in the guidelines of the course of study or within state statute in terms of education, then we can write a flexibility waiver, and the state will grant us permission to do some innovative things that may be different or might not be being offered at the time.
Are all students teachable?
Yes, they are. And that's should be the mantra of any educator. All students can learn. Now, the different rates of learning is different, varies from student to student. I think we sometimes get caught up that the students aren't progressing at the same amount of time. That doesn't mean that a child isn't learning, because I may pick up something quicker, whereas Dr. Pram may not pick up in a certain area as quickly as I would. And it could be vice versa. It just depends on the child, the individuality of the child. There should not be a cookie cutter environment when it comes to educating our children. We think sometimes that we put them all in that classroom, line them up in rows, and we teach a certain way, they're all going to get it. No, they're not, because we all don't learn the same way. So in order for us to have maximal outcome from our kids, we have to get into their environment to figure out what is the best way for them to learn. And
it goes back to what she was mentioning earlier. That's why we got to consistently train our teachers so that they can make sure that they're preparing our students. What's going on now is that we're preparing students for careers that have not even been created yet.
Amazing.
I always talk about it all the time. Think about it. You didn't have iPads, right. A decade ago.
That's right.
So now we're teaching people of how to, because that's an everyday thing that they use. If you work at a fast food place, you may be working with an iPad. Absolutely. So we're in an age now where we've got to teach our students how to critically think and how to really problem solve. And so it's important for us as the community to know that it's not going to be like you went to school. So the roles are not going to be the same. No, you may not have homework every day. No, they may not use a standard textbook. They may use something else. So getting them to understand that the way that we do school business now is different because we're moving with what the workforce or the work world is dictating to us. So we've got to prepare our students now on how to critically think. So regardless of whatever career they choose, they have the ability to, number one, have the social skills to really work with other folks as a team, collaborate. Number two, be able to have the capacity to be trained. I think that's that's one. And then number three, to really have the stick-to-itiveness or that grit to make sure that they're going to always work to the end to make sure that they produce the best product. And I think if we can get them to understand that will be great for the community and for school district.
Any final comments?
I believe strongly in public education. Public education for me was the thing that helped me gain exposure to different opportunities. I know there's a lot of talk about school choice and in charter schools, and I think that there should be an option for anyone who does what is best for his or her child. But for me, public education and for my environment and my situation was the best thing for me. When we go to vote, we need to think about those things that not only going to affect us, but also that's going to affect every child that our child comes in contact with. And we would like for our kids to have a very diverse background in meeting people, in learning different things. And a lot of times when we decide to, when we listen to our politics, we think only of ourselves. But I was brought up in, am I my brother's keeper? And I have always felt like that I am my brother's keeper. And in saying that when we go out and vote for these different things, when we go out and vote for legislators who want to cut the education budget, we need to think about, are we our brother's keeper? Because it may not affect Phoenix City or Russell County, but it may affect another school district down the road that because certain things were cut, that they're not going to be able to offer that to their children.
And I would say to the community at large, don't always believe the rhetoric and the narrative that the house is burning down. Even though I'm retired now, I mean, just listening to the conversation, and I know Dr. Patrick, but we have more than capable leaders. I'm fully confident that that the leaders that we have now, they're really going to take us to a whole nother stratosphere in terms of public education. So my admonishment would be, please communicate and work actively with the administrators, with the teachers, because unless you have a real relationship, you really don't know exactly what's going on. And once you form that relationship, you really form the trust. And when trust is there, then it allows us to really do the things that we've been called to do. And that's really to educate our children.
Can I say thank you, Dr. Patrick? Thank you, Dr. Pram. Will you come back again to inform us and educate our viewers on what's going on in the educational system?
Sure.
And I would like to thank you for even allowing us to be on a platform like this, to be able to give pertinent information that sometimes people may just not know. So I'm going to encourage folks to tune in, because if this is just an example of what you're doing on a regular consistent basis, then I applaud you for taking the stand to be able to educate our community so that we can have a better community. And the only way that you're going to be better is you got to have the knowledge to do that.
Thank you so very much. And I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I'd like to thank the innovator and creator of this great show. And as I always say, I pray you have sweet, sweet dreams of big life and peace of mind.